Hello, welcome to today's video in which we will be looking at loss of self-control. We will look at a scenario and plan an answer to it, and then look at an extract from an answer. But first, let's look at the structure of an answer. Now, it's optional, but you can start off your answer with an introductory paragraph. Now, this paragraph will have a brief summary of the main legal issues that you're going to include within the answer. You can utilize this as a way to structure and plan your answer. This is not necessary. If you already have a plan and structure in mind, then you can skip this part. But if you don't, and you want to visualize how you're going to structure your answer, then you can use an introductory paragraph like this. Or you could just go straight into the body of paragraphs. Now, each paragraph should focus on a specific legal issue. There should be a topic sentence, which is focusing on the main legal issue you'll be discussing in this paragraph. Each paragraph should focus on a different legal issue, and the topic sentence should introduce it. After that, you further explain that issue, and this will gain you AO1 marks. After that, you apply the AO1 onto the scenario to gain maximum AO2 marks. After that, you can include counter arguments or further analysis of the scenario and how the law may apply or how the law may not apply. So dealing with any misinterpretations or any misconceptions that people may have. And that will essentially allow you to maximize AO2 marks, as there are more marks for AO2 than AO1. The 20 marks are split up into 8 marks for AO1, 12 marks for AO2. So you want to ensure that you can maximize on and get as many AO2 marks as possible throughout your answer. And then finally, you have a conclusion in which you can try and gain more AO2 marks. So you quickly summarize your main arguments made, and then you provide a clear answer to the question, and you can also evaluate the scenario further. Now we will look at the scenario. Harry had recovered from an earlier addiction to drugs, but his brain has suffered some damage, and he was subject to very large mood changes. Whilst Harry was out in town one night, he saw his girlfriend Katie engaged in a very passionate kiss with Matt, a chef from the restaurant where Katie worked. When he later confronted her with this, she said that although she liked Matt very much, it was the first time they've ever kissed. Harry brooded on this for a few days. He then happened to see a bill for Kate's mobile phone, which indicated she's been sending a lot of texts to Matt for some time. One of the messages also made fun of the fact that Harry had brain damage. Furious, Harry immediately rushed over to the restaurant and exchanged insults with Matt. He picked up a saucepan and hit Matt hard in the face, and he later died. Now, the problem with what I've just done is I've read through this scenario, but I've not taken any key information out. What am I supposed to be looking for? Am I looking for mens rea? Am I looking for defenses? Am I looking for the actus reus of murder? What am I supposed to take out from this? If I had read the question, I'd know exactly what I was looking for. So, if I read the question now, discuss whether Harry would be able to use loss of self-control as a defense if he was charged with the murder of Matt. So now, upon reading the question, I've just come to the realization that I do not at all have to discuss murder, because we have to advise Harry whether he is able to use loss of self-control as a defense if he was charged with murder. So we have to assume he was charged with murder, and then we have to apply the criteria for loss of control onto the scenario. So all our AO1 marks lies in loss of control. Now, whilst we were reading through the scenario, we were not looking for crucial points for loss of control. So always make sure when you see the scenario, you jump straight down to the question first. You read the question and then you go through the scenario, highlighting the key points, making sure not to waste your time and using your time effectively as possible to plan your answer. As you're reading through the scenario, you should make a plan like this inside your head. So when you read the question, you find out you only need to talk about loss of self-control. When you find out it's about loss of self-control, you need to immediately jump to the Coroner's Justice Act, section 54 to 56, and you should remember the 3 main points under loss of control. Section 54 1A, 1B and 1C. Loss of self-control, qualifying triggers, and the standard of self-control. And now you'll know exactly what to look for in the scenario. You'll look to identify where he lost his self-control, and if there were, where were the qualifying triggers? Was something said? Was something done? Had he been wronged? Or was there serious violence against him? So my plan goes like this. I first look at the first section for loss of self-control and use the case McGregory to explain loss of self-control. And then subsection 2 and 4. So that's fairly straightforward. The AO1 content should be memorized, and I shouldn't really need to explain it, and I'm not going to explain it much in this video. So for the AO2, which is where most of your marks lie, I've said, Javi's ability of self-restraint began to overwhelm him when he saw Kate engaged in a kiss. Then, when he saw messages between the two mocking him. Javi immediately rushed to the restaurant, exchanged insults, and hit him with a saucepan. He rushed, and he didn't plan or premeditate. So the fact that he had rushed in without plan or premeditation shows that he has lost self-control, and the events that led to him rushing into the restaurant and hitting him shows that he lost self-control after he had exchanged the insults with Matt. That is when he truly lost self-control. After that, we will look at the qualifying triggers. That will be things said or done, and you can use these cases here to explain further, maximize on AO1 marks. So here in the AO2, have you read things said by Kate and Matt mocking him for his brain damage? These things said satisfy 55-4. Then he exchanges insults with Matt, and that furthers his sense of being wronged. So this just further shows that there was a qualifying trigger. The affair itself cannot be a qualifying trigger, and that's explained in the Act. And it cannot be considered by the jury. But then you'd go to expand, just because, and you can use the case Clinton, just because there was sexual infidelity, this does not mean that the defendant is unable to rely on the defense of loss of self-control. And this is sometimes a misconception that students or people have in general, that if there was sexual infidelity, then they can't rely on the Act, or at least this was an issue in the point of law. So make sure to expand on that. Next, we have the standard of self-control. And this is also another place where you can apply the AO1 onto the scenario in great detail. What I've written was, the circumstances include the girlfriend Katie, Matt, and events that led to Matt's death. It will not include the brain damage. Make sure to emphasize that it won't include his brain damage, because that is where you'll get your AO2 marks. Because it shows the examiner that you know what you're talking about. You know the content, and you're able to apply it onto the scenario. Harry didn't truly lose self-control until the very end. Capacity of self-control was high at the beginning, and a comparable person would have acted similarly. Now this is where you'd use your counter-argument technique. So you'd say something what you believe, and then you can try and counter it, so the examiner can see that you're really evaluating and applying you're applying the law, the AO1, onto the scenario. So essentially what you're doing is you're showing off your skills of being able to apply the law onto the scenario. And then you come to your conclusion. Now here's a very short extract of the answer. And here's a very brief introductory paragraph. Sections 54 to 56 of the Coroners and Justice Act set out the provisions for the special defence to murder, loss of self-control, which Harry must satisfy to use loss of self-control as a defence. Now, as you can see, I did not put much information into this introductory paragraph because it was rather straightforward, loss of self-control. And the sections A, B and C, loss of self-control, qualifying triggers, and then the comparable person. So I didn't need to put that into the introductory paragraph because I already had a structure in mind. But if you feel like you need to write the structure down, you can go ahead and you can write it in the introductory paragraph, those 3 points which I just said. So section 54(1)(a) states there must be a loss of self-control. The case R.V. McGrory states a loss of self-control is where the defendant's ability of self-restraint was so overwhelmed that he suddenly attacks. Section 54 subsection 2 states that the loss of self-control needn't be sudden, which indicates there can be a slow burn effect and the defendant doesn't have to act instantly. Now this slow burn effect is also illustrated in the case Ahluwalia, which you can also look up for on the internet, and that would obviously gain you more AO1 marks. The defendant can't have acted in revenge, section 55 subsection 4. Harry's ability of self-restraint began to overwhelm him when he saw his girlfriend Kate kiss Matt. He then saw messages between the two, mocking him for his brain damage. At that point, Harry immediately rushed to the restaurant, exchanged insults with Matt, and then picked up the saucepan and hit him hard in the face. As seen, Harry acted suddenly, and he rushed over to the restaurant. The fact he hadn't taken any weapons with him shows that he was not acting in revenge and had some self-control. But this changed during his verbal conflict with Matt, in which he hit him. Thus, Harry had lost self-control as he was overcome by his emotions, which led to his sudden action. So here I really went into detail and identified the very point Harry had lost self-control. So thus, he satisfies section 54(1)(a), and there was a loss of self-control, and I've explained the definition of self-control, and I've applied that onto the scenario. So, the definition of self-control in R.V. McGrory states that loss of self-control is where the defendant's ability of self-restraint was so overwhelmed that he suddenly attacks. So I'm showing how the events led up to the point in which he was in the restaurant and was having his verbal conflict with Matt. He was so overwhelmed that he suddenly attacked, and I even used the words sudden action, and you can quote parts of the scenario showing his suddenness in his movements. And that is how you maximize on your AO1 marks, making sure you apply the law accurately onto the scenario. So that was all. Go ahead and have a go for yourselves. Write a full answer to this and mark yourself. See what level band you'd go into, 3 or 4. That should be rather straightforward, and I'll see you in the next video.